call in and get something done. Right. So you are absolutely positively right. And it was not an environment that was inviting. Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And today is the opposite. It's the opposite, right? Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yeah, it's the total opposite. All right, anybody else want to share? Yes, ma'am, we're over here.
So for the first question, I put also myself in addition to persistent communication and innovative ideas. For what is dragging us down, I put the lack of or inconsistent participation. And then for the wind in our sails, I put being hopeful that things will get better and the influx in recent participation.
Yes, sir.
I serve as the leader of man. What's keeping us afloat is the structure that we have in our brotherhood. What's dragging us down is more time management. And we in ourselves is the desire to want to be better.
All right, thank you. So thanks for sharing. So all these things we're gonna come back to, and we'll tie this in at the end. All right. So we heard some people say that I'm keeping it afloat. You're the leader. I mean, that's a fact. A lot of times you see that. But when you think about leadership, everything starts at the top. And an old man told me a long time ago, he said, son, the fish rots at the head. So as a leader, if you're not right, the fish is gonna rot. It starts with you, the top. I'm like, that makes sense. So when you think about what leaders do, the only thing of real importance that leaders do is create and manage culture. So when you think about the culture of your ministry, how is it created? And how are you managing it? Because it's easy to sit back and say, you know what? Joe ain't doing what he needs to be doing. He doesn't come to meetings. He doesn't do this. But how are you creating a culture? And that's the number one thing that was missing in Apple, the old way, when that particular location was culture. But the culture was broken. People didn't care. They felt they were in control. There's not another Apple store. The closest Apple store to this city is Little Rock. Which Little Rock, I believe, is 150 miles. Yeah, so Nashville, 200. So you got Nashville, Little Rock, and Jackson, Mississippi. So we get everything in between. And Birmingham, Alabama is 4 hours, so that's another one. So that's how we see so much traffic. But if the people don't understand the vision, and it's not reiterated while they're there, and we're not driving accountability around it, it will be a free fall. You know, so going back to thinking about, as a leader, so we all know opportunities on our ministry. So I'll give you an example. I'm a chairman of a ministry, men's ministry at Mississippi Boulevard. I'm an usher. I used to be an usher. Been there all my life, so I know the ins and outs. Through the lawsuit we went through issues Pastor Turner's having now with congregation. You know how it is. Everybody wants to be in control. That's everywhere. But you got to deal with it, okay? So I've always said, by us being leaders, are we treating the symptoms or are we treating the disease? We want to treat the disease. And we want to get better. You know, I can write you something for a cough, but are you going deeper to see what's causing this? That's where we have to go as leaders. So thinking about our store and what we've done, it starts with vision. So I asked Pastor Moore, you know, what's the vision or mantra for this church? Can I tell you what it is? Awesome. He said everybody would know. So think about it. I love that. Transforming lives and change the world. Okay? So I'll tell you what Mississippi Boulevard says. That's why I have these hats up here. It doesn't say that on there. But we're a church that's leading, learning, and loving without limits. Okay? So when you think about the two mantras, okay, it's one thing to have a vision, but is it acted out? Do people see the vision in motion? So for example, if I'm leading, learning, and living without limits, and I'm turning homeless away, you think I'm in here. Is that doing that? I'm not saying we do that, I'm just giving an example. You know, because people look at mantras, okay, you say that, but are you executing? So you think about your mantra, transform lives to change the world. So whose lives are we talking about? Members, visitors, yeah, everybody we encounter. Everybody we encounter. Whether you're in the Kroger with a New Life shirt on, you know, what does that look like? Yeah. So I'll give an example of these two hats. Okay? So everywhere I wear this cap to, people, oh, you working out. Wow. Now I got an iPhone, I got the watch, I got the AirPods, I got this, start telling me their whole life story. Or something's not working right. Can you help me? Right, I get more than that. Right. Why I wear this one? What do you think that I hear in the city? Yeah, the boulevard. What's the boulevard? You don't see the other part, but what's the boulevard? But what else? And I tell you more in recent times when I have this on. Oh, y'all the church where the pastor got killed over there. Okay, and that's normal because that's been in the media. It's been in the commercial appeal.
Yeah.
But I started thinking, I'm like, okay, now I wear this hat before he got killed. But people would never really ask or knew what we did in the community.
Wow.
Now this one you know, but this one was an opportunity. So I thought about, I said, are we being the finest representation of the brand in the community? Do people understand, yeah, we're a church of 4 walls, but guess what? We're just not in here, we're going out there. Do people know that? So when you think about your church, what's the word on the street about New Life? And people say, well, I don't worry about that. No, you need to worry about it. Because there can be some validity and truth to what they're saying. So have a pulse, not only what's happening in your 4 walls, get some out there too. So that's how we transform lives. So just something to keep top of mind there. So next, so we've already talked about vision, mantra. So my challenge is, when you have a vision or mantra like you have, is that ask yourself the question, this is in your individual ministries, is it alive? Or is it resting on a page in a book? So when I come to the member orientation, or I look on the screens in the sanctuary, the mission's up there, but is it alive in your ministry? So how are you transforming lives of people on your team? Are you interacting with them? Are you having those frank conversations about where they are and where you need them to be? Because we have to do that. You know, that's part of accountability. Has anybody ever seen this before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I love this picture. So I don't know if this is the Egyptians or what they're doing. So let's just say they're building a pyramid here. So if you look at the first picture, the boss is pointing, telling them where to go. If you look at the second one, the leader is up front, leading the team. So what I've learned is 2 things. Leadership is presence. I can easily, like today, Pastor Moore was asking me how my day went. I go in there. I don't have to go in there every day. Bishop, you were in there Friday, right? When he walked in, I saw him. I was sitting on the floor doing work on my laptop. I got an office. Why do you think I was on the floor? Present. I want to see what's going on. I'm not going to depend on somebody to tell me what's happening there. I'm going to see it and be in the middle of it. And so when I saw him, got up, greeted him, talked to him. So interesting about Bishop, he came in for pastors. You can use me right now. Is it working? Okay. All right, so he came in to get a new one of those, a keypad for our iPad Pro. What was interesting, when Bishop left, there was a young man, and you remember shaking his hand, talking to him? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when Bishop left, his name is Corey, he came up to me, he said, was that T.D. Jakes? I said, the Memphis version, yeah. I said, but no, it's Bishop Woods. I said, what did he say to you? He said, man, he was so complimentary of me. He noticed what I was doing. Now, if the man had an attitude, you think Bishop would have done it? He wouldn't. But he connected with it and he remembered that. So even on your team, your individual teams, are you speaking to people about what they're doing? Are you watching it? Are you giving feedback in a moment to them? And also, more importantly, as a leader, modeling the behavior. So when you think about this, nothing extraordinary ever happened without a leader articulating vision. So think about John F. Kennedy. He wanted a man on the moon. It happened. Some people say that's fake. I don't know. I wasn't around then. Okay. But He gave direction and he challenged the nation to put a man on the moon. So also, I just finished reading a book by Tavis Smiley. It's called The Death of a King. Everybody read that book here? Okay, so the book really talks about the life of Dr. King in his last year. Okay, and it really hones in on his last night in Memphis. And you guys have probably heard this, but the mountaintop speech almost didn't happen. He had a sore throat. So he told Ralph Abernathy to go on down to Mason Temple and conduct it. So he got down there, people, standing room only, people all outside. This is a thunderstorm. So he gets on the phone, calls Dr. King to room 306 and said, Doc, you gotta come. He said, people wanna see you and they wanna feel the message that we shall overcome. So he got out of his bed and came down there. So imagine what would have transpired if he wouldn't have. Not saying Ralph Abernathy couldn't have delivered the message, but it's not the same. Because who the leader is. It's the same thing with you. So just as the people believed in Dr. King at that moment in time and wanted to hear him, do your people want to hear you? So what are you putting out and portraying as leaders to your team? So I'll give you an example of two things we do at Apple. Is the first one is called NPP, which stands for Net Promoter People. It's an employee loyalty survey. All anonymous. And let me tell you, when they first did it on me, they tore me apart. Okay? But I wasn't surprised at the results. Let me tell you some things they said about me. That I was demanding, that I didn't care about people, I'm holding them accountable. So when I read the comments, I said, I'm doing my job. And the people above me said the same thing. Keep doing what you're doing. So I made a statement. So we moved across the street, I'll never forget. So that store we're in now is the first outdoor store in the company of that type. So we got it here in Memphis, first prototype. So we were in a meeting, so I told the staff, and these were some of the bad apple students. I said, guys, look. I said, I want you to look around to your left and your right. I said, everybody sitting next to you on either side, some of them not going across the street. And they were like, what? I said, because everybody you start with, you don't finish with. And I said, we're going in a new direction. And I said, I need winners and dedicated people. If you're not that person, you gotta make a choice. You gotta go, you know. So from their perspective, you know, we start losing people, okay? And it's the same thing in the church. I'll give you an example. So when I was an usher, we had a person on the team that had a drinking problem, okay? So leadership, well, hey, we gotta pray with him, we gotta talk to him. We did all those things. Didn't work. So I called a meeting with the leaders. I was an officer at the time. I said, we gotta cut him loose. It didn't work. So we called him in, and we probably still a member, but he wasn't fit for the ministry. Because how can you be functional on the door as a doorkeeper and you're drunk?
Right.
I don't know if he's drunk in the seat or not now, I don't know. But he's no longer in ministry. So my point in sharing that is that we can't be afraid to have the right conversations. Because everybody, some people can be miscast. And if they're not catching your vision, you have to act. But do it with tact, of course, but it makes a difference.
I have a funny story I want to
Yes,
share
ma'am.
because you touched on something. This happened yesterday. One of my team members, we're Christian casual for the summer months.
Okay.
And so she had sent me a text that morning to ask, you know, were we casual, we were wearing our uniforms? And so her husband, he told her, yes, we are. And she said, no, I got to hear it from Miss Jackie. she didn't know, she just said she had to hear it from me.
From you.
And so I texted her back and I told her yes, and you know, it was just funny that she told me that yesterday.
Right.
You had touched on
But why do you think she had to hear from you though?
I'm a good leader.
You're a good leader. She believes in what you do,
And what I do.
and she sees you model the behaviors that you expect from your team.
Yeah.
That's what we do in leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, my motto is this, is that each one of us have jobs. Okay, some of you are employed by the church or at different companies. But regardless of the role you serve in, we all get evaluated in some shape, form, or fashion. But what I told my team was, I said, yeah, my manager delivers my review, but you write it. The people, 140 people write my review because they're acting on what I'm teaching. And if I'm not out there coaching and developing, not just me, I have 9 managers under me, but if we're not out there doing those things, guess what? It's not gonna be right. And it goes back to your roles. What does that look like? How does it feel? And how are you acting on the feedback you are receiving? So next. So one of my managers, I was in the Bahamas 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to her. When I go on vacation, I still work. It's hard, not to. Okay. So I was talking to her and just telling her some things that I learned in corporate when I was out there 4 weeks ago. And I was telling her some new initiatives we need to work on. And she said, Brian, she said, we have to be obsessed with improvement and never become complacent. Carmen Starks, I gave her credit for what she said. And what was interesting, I started thinking about that, and I'll share this with you. So, from Apple, how many of you guys have Apple users? Raise your hand. So, majority of the room. Okay, thank you. All right. So, one thing Apple is struggling in, this is public information, is iPhone sales. Okay? So, anybody that has an iPhone 6, you remember the battery thing we had issued? So, if you didn't, I'll tell you what happened. There was a young man up in, I want to say McKenzie, Tennessee or somewhere. He discovered that Apple was deliberately slowing down the batteries of phones. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And this is a teenager now. He proved it and challenged it. Okay? So Apple came back and issued an apology and explained the reason why they're slowed down is because we do so many updates. You wouldn't be able to keep up. So we just slow it down to gradually move you into it. So big apology was issued. We had to offer customer batteries at $29. That a battery replacement is usually $100. So lines are out of the door. So we lost consumer trust because he proved what people felt we were doing all along. So how do we restore trust? Number one, we own it. It's true, all we know is true what he said to a degree, but this is what we're going to do to appease you. Okay? So, and we did more than appeasing. Some people got new devices. So what that did from a company perspective is that if you have an iPhone 6, right now we're on the XS, so that's like 4 behind. But if I was putting a new battery in it, you got more life out of it. So longevity purposes. So that slowed down iPhone sales. But where we made up the difference was in the other product. So for example, I saw somebody earlier had these right here with the cord on. Okay, come see me get these right here. But think about the evolution of our technology. These are wireless AirPods, the #1 selling accessory in Apple right now. Can't keep them in stock. And last time I was here, I showed the evolution of the iPhone. Everybody remember the iPhone used to be real small? And look how the size it is now. This is the newer one, the Max, okay? But if you think about the basis of it, we've evolved, but the operating system is almost the same. So when you think about your ministries, we started this way. The basis is there with the vision, but how do we evolve and grow with the times? And as a leader, are you doing that? Wow. Something top of mind. So 3 things. So we have a mantra. We've established the church has a mantra. We have a mantra at Apple. And I went back and started looking at, okay, how can we go next level? Because you all work with people, and maybe people in church, they get a degree, they're ready to be the CEO. I'm ready to change the world. I'm ready to be promoted. Okay, you're not even doing what you're supposed to be doing where you are. So I sat down one night back in 2015 and wrote this down. So this is the vision I wrote out to them. So we have a company vision, but this is mine for them. Number 1, be brilliant at the basics.
Yeah. That's it.
Basic stuff. So think about your ministry. Is your team brilliant at the basic things you need them to do? Okay? Number 2, be world class where you are. Are you being the best and the finest representation from the seat you are in? You might want my job, okay, and I can help you get there. But again, are you doing what you need to be doing, and are you world class where you are? Last thing is maintain your appetite. And what I mean by that is stay hungry for growth and learning. You know, if you don't feed something, it's gonna die. And you have to continuously challenge yourself, stay hungry for next level improvement. So in terms of our ministries, yeah, we're here, but how do we take it higher? It goes back to what we did when I asked you to reach as high as you can. Keep going. What's next level? Stay hungry. So in terms of Apple, be and breathe at the basics. So NPP again stands for Net Promoter People. An anonymous survey we do to feel the temperature, how people feel. We did this at Mississippi Boulevard about a year ago with the staff and volunteer leaders. Very interesting feedback. So we didn't give it to the leaders, we gave it to the people on the teams. And they went in on some stuff, okay? So for example, the chairman of the usher board, tossed me like I'm a child, all this kind of stuff came out. So we were able to take that feedback and go back and have appropriate conversations. Now mind you, if somebody said that I talked to them like a child, if I didn't see 3 or more of the same type of things, is that really an issue? So you have to be able to decipher what's critical versus important. But that survey did us a world of good because you might ask them to give me feedback, guess what, they don't feel comfortable telling you. That's because you're the head. Well, I don't want to hurt your feelings or blah, 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 but they go out and talk about you. No, so just something to keep top of mind is that, get a pulse, on where you are. Next thing is focus. So being world class where you are, this applies to the leadership here in your roles, is focus, discipline, and action. Are you modeling behaviors you want to see from your team? Is it being executed? And the same thing with you, are you maintaining your appetite, staying hungry for growth and learning, and challenging where you are? I like what you said earlier about Christian education, on just next level thinking about teachers, what you're looking for, because it's not easy work. And sometimes you can be so good at what you do, it looks easy. But again, you gotta really hold people accountable and make sure that vision is consistent. So here, it's very interesting. It's all about the right people. Anybody ever heard of Jack Welch? Yeah, Jack Welch was the CEO of GE. He single-handedly turned that company around. One quote that he says, I'll share with you, he said, if you pick the right people and give them an opportunity to spread their wings and put compensation as a carrier behind it, you almost don't have to manage them. Now, from a church perspective, we're not paying volunteers, but how can we take what he said, and I'll read it again, and transform it and make it applicable to what we do in our ministry? So he said, if you pick the right people and give them the opportunity to spread their wings and put compensation as a carrier behind it, you almost don't have to manage them. So from a volunteer perspective, how can we reword that? Or what are some things you've done as a leader to get a result or have that kind of thought? Pick the right people. But once you select the right people, how do you keep them? How do you keep them?
They create opportunities and then praise them when they do well, give feedback.
Right. So now I love that. Let me tell you, one thing I live by is that what gets rewarded gets repeated. So think about that. If I'm constantly giving you recognition, not monetary or dangling a carrot, I saw you greet that number this morning and you put a big smile on her face, thank you. Something as simple as that goes a long way. Musician, man, the way you played that organ today, man, you took us in. You played with passion, thank you. It resonates. People live up to the expectations you set for them. So if we have a bar set low, what do you think they're gonna give us? They're gonna give us low results. But if you're consistently and constantly talking about your vision and recognize them in a moment and how they're doing, you'll see some next level movement. Question?
I love that perspective on retention, but is it possible for you to speak to the process of acquisition, getting individuals on your team? What does that process look like for these leaders?
All right, so two things, that's a great question. So the biggest thing for me, and I'm gonna answer this two ways, because I can answer from a corporate perspective, I shared this with Bishop on Friday, is that we go out and get people. We do on-purpose recruiting to get out. So for example, if I'm depending on who's just applying,
Wow.
I'm gonna get bottom feeders.
Wow.
So let's just be transparent for one another. We live in a city that a lot of businesses are struggling, not because of the company vision, it's because of the quality of the people. So I'll give you an example with Bass Pro Shop, okay, downtown. Do you know when they built that pyramid, That is their flagship store. When they came to Memphis, they were paying $10 an hour. And the quality of applicant was so bad, they had to go back and raise to 13 to attract a different caliber person. Then they took to 14. Okay, so they realized that, okay, we gotta get the cream of the crop here. You know, so with Apple, we go out and see people, and I'm making a point, all the leaders that work under me, I said, I wanna know today where you're going. Outline, so if you're gonna whoop Chase Mall, when you come back to me, tell me what stores you went into and give me names. And we have this card, I wish I would've brought it, I didn't bring it. It simply says, you're extraordinary, would love to talk to you about Apple. It's like a business card, powerful. And you just write your name on it, Brian Harris, here's my contact information. So when people see that, they're like, wow, Apple, oh yeah. So think about it from a volunteer perspective. You have members right now sitting in your pews who are pew warmers, who have the potential to be great. But just striking a conversation with them. So for example, if I'm engaging with you about, just say, the greeter ministry, I see him smiling every Sunday. Before church started, he's in the pew talking to everybody, shaking hands like a mayor. Okay? I see him, I can use him on my ministry. Now let me talk to you about the greeter ministry. You see what I'm saying? So you're looking for people out there who are doing what you want your team to do. That's the acquisition part. Also, from a ministry fair, do we do ministry fairs here? Yeah. So you'll get people walk past your table. In our church, we have tables set up and all these, things, and you'll see, oh, what's this? Okay, then keep walking. Okay, and some of them need to keep walking. But there are some that we see that we got to go out and get. You can't just depend on people to come to you. Go out and get them. But you have to be in a mindset that you're observing their behaviors. And are you exhibiting the behaviors that will make them want to be part of your team and under you? Wow. That's the flip side of that. So think about this. So how many of you guys eat eggs and bacon? Pretty much everybody. So you in a chicken and pig breakfast, you know what the difference between the chicken and the pig is? Yeah, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. Okay? Yeah. Pig is committed. He laid down his life. No, he sacrificed. Chicken just laid the egg. So when you think about our ministries, are we involved or are we committed? We want to be committed. And we want people to know we're committed. They got to see it. It's got to be a billboard. I think, Pastor, you would tell me there was a billboard that Turner was talking about that New Life had up on the way to Midtown. Yeah. Or do people see your billboard? You got to be a walking billboard as a leader. Our selection process, let's talk about this. So since we're talking about selection and acquisition, so think about your vision. So everyone joining your team must have a clear expectation of what your vision is. So whatever your ministry is, although we will recruit them, they may not know, they should have some kind of idea. We all know that we're transforming, changing lives, but are they seeing you do that in your ministry? Are you doing it to a degree that says, well, I want to be a part of that? That security ministry, who's over security here? Okay, do people see you guys on the lot? Like, man, these brothers are on it, sisters are on it. I want to be part of that. So what's the book on you? What are people saying? Are you modeling the right behavior? So they should see that. Also, innovation minded. Where we lose a lot of people in the volunteer world and corporate world is that we're so stuck on tradition, the way we do things, going back to that ham. We don't want any new ideas. You have to be open to innovation because you're doing it this way. Is it working? Could it be better? And the most dangerous phrase in the human language is we've always done it that way. That's a recipe for disaster. So, but are you projecting to people that you welcome innovation? Yes, sir.
So the question is, like you referenced, is it working? So let's say we have a ministry that we're leading it the way it's been led all the time. So how can you judge if it's working? If you see consistent growth, but it's consistent turnover too.
Okay.
So how can you judge if you're actually doing it properly? Like, you need to innovate.
Right.
Or do you need to stay the same?
Okay, that's a great question, so I'll answer that. So, from your perspective, think about your turnover. Well, musicians, you see that, because some of them get promoted to different churches and different roles, etc. But the first thing I would do is that ask myself, why am I having turnover? Why are people leaving? Okay? Then from a what's working perspective, yeah, we've always done it this way, but then pose the question, how can we do something different and get an even better result? When you pose that kind of question, think, guys, we're doing well. Our members are feeling the worship, everything like that, but what's next level? What can we do differently? And what I've learned is, and I give you an example of this is under Frank Thomas, former pastor. So I was on a committee where we benchmarked. Okay? So we talked about undercover boss earlier. We would go to different churches and see what they were doing. Okay? So we had an opportunity at Mississippi Boulevard because people, the word on the street was we weren't friendly, we were bougie. You know, that's the bougie church, all that opera singing down there. I'm just being real. Okay? That's the word. Okay, but how do we break that myth? Okay? So what I did was I called out to Bellevue Baptist, which we bought their old location. And there's a guy by the name of Pastor Wayne Webb, I'll never forget. The guy was so welcoming and warm. He was the pastor of hospitality. So I go out there and I explain to him, I said, sir, you don't know me from Adam. I said, I'm doing a benchmark program. I'm going to report back to the board on what I saw at Bellevue. You mind giving me a tour of your church and let me ask you some questions? He said, absolutely. Come on out here. So I go out there. The first thing I noticed on the parking lot were guests, the word guest in spaces. Then I noticed senior in spaces. Okay? So I'm taking notes on my iPad. Like, okay, I saw this on the parking lot, I saw this. So first impressions, parking lot. Okay? I get to church, his admin comes to get me, we start talking. So I started asking him questions. So I talked about why I was there. And I said, I want to just get some best practices on how we can improve our ministry. So he started explaining things from a hospitality perspective. First thing out of his mouth was, he said, how big is your volunteer program? I said, it's pretty large. He said, when's the last time you had a volunteer banquet? Never. He said, you've never had a volunteer banquet? I said, you know, I'm 41 now. And I said, probably, the last time I tell you was probably 1989 we had. Okay? And we just did something recently for the volunteers. First problem. Second thing he said, who's going in every Sunday to touch base with people and make sure they have everything they need? From a ministry perspective. And it was him. Because he's the pastor of hospitality. So he would walk around, so if the man, hey man, y'all got everything you need to walk. Small things. Coffee, you know, etc. Snacks. That stuff goes a long ways. It costs nothing. You know, and so people always joke with me, you always feed those people at Apple. You know, because food brings conversation. You know, it makes a difference. That brings people together. So doing something as small as that for your team, buying them some muffins, may cost you $10, but guess what you're going to get in return? $1 million worth of work. Because they appreciate what you did, the gesture. So anyway, so with him, I'm taking pictures out there. So I go back, I said, guys, I said, we have an opportunity. I said, this whole thing about the senior parking, what they do, if you're a senior citizen, they got valet parking. You pull your car up, they give you, just like you do valet, they park your car at the senior park. You know, we don't have that, but we have the guest thing park, but not members park in the guest spots, you know. That ain't working. So that's still a work in progress. But we got space for it. But I said that to say, go back to your point, benchmark. What are you seeing other people do that's working for them? And don't be afraid to ask. I'm sure pastors, y'all talk all the time and will benchmark with other churches. Sure. And, you know, something's going great over here, we share it. Same thing. That's how we thrive. So don't be afraid to go out and just be an undercover boss and see what somebody else is doing and bring it back and make it better. So, future minded. So, driven Okay, let me just say this: driven leaders have a vision of the future, and they contribute every day to create the future. So, in your roles, are you thinking futuristic? Are you thinking of ways we can continuously improve and getting that feedback from others? And feedback does not have to come just from your team; it can be from each other. You know, so in Christian education, how do you feel about what we're teaching the curriculum? What's your feedback? I know what the book is, but is that the right book for what we are? That type of feedback. Are passionate minded. So are people passionate about what you do? But they can only be passionate minded if you're exhibiting passion. They got to see it and feel it, and then they want to be a part of it. And the last thing is contribution minded. You know, when I look at people, I don't look at somebody who wants to retire with a gold watch. Okay? That's long term. I look at somebody who wants to come in there, that's a proven winner, who's come onto the vision and wants to make a difference and take us higher. So we had some applicants a couple of weeks ago, and the managers always tell us, don't bring anybody to me, because I'm the last step in the process, unless they can take this team higher. I don't need people who are going to help us maintain it. I want people who are going to take us to the next level. And they're like, well, how do you do that? Okay, people that come in with ideas, they might not understand Apple, but they have recommendations. Some of them make sense, some of them don't, but I know you're thinking, because you're talking. And that shows me you're innovative, you're passion-minded, and you want to be part of this team. So any questions about selection? Knows a lot of information. Okay? Let's talk about coaching and development. This is a key thing. So when you think about coaching and development, we're dealing with volunteers. Somebody always say, don't fire the volunteers.
Yeah.
That's true. But we still need to coach and develop. So does anybody have an example in your ministry of you coaching and developing a person that was at risk? At risk meaning they were just hanging by a thread, but you brought them on in and took them to where they should be. Anybody have an example of that? I know we see it at work, but what about in the ministry? Somebody you were able to save and pull back in and get them on the right track by having a conversation. Anybody? Yeah.
But, and I won't call you names.
Sure.
One of the things I feel that I'm good at is seeing potential, recognizing potential. And there was a person that had a lot of potential, a lot of enthusiasm, committed, just lacked people skills. And we're in the people business.
People business. Yeah.
And that's just kind of my saying. We don't sell cars, we don't sell chicken. We're in the people business. But not wanting, but seeing all of those other good qualities that this person possessed, motivated me to take that person under my wing. And what I did was, because I believe that for every slice of criticism, there needs to be 2 slices of praise.
Right.
And being able to help that person, or being able to affirm their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And then affirming that I felt they were worth the investment.
Right.
And it's been amazing that this person is so very open, because as our relationship progressed, you gotta have a relationship with people to critique.
Right.
They can take the hard criticism and they bounce back, and has been a success story.
Right. That's awesome. So I want to just go back to what Pastor said. So think about it. From this perspective, she was in a position to notice. She sees the potential in people. She saw potential in this person. So what that tells me about Pastor is she's on purpose in what she's looking for in growing people. And as leaders, you have to do that. It's easy to identify what people are doing wrong. But they did something right. I'll give you an example. We had a situation today at work, and there's a young man who wants to go to New York. He's an aspiring dancer and all these things. Great guy. We got him from Starbucks. He was a barista. Very personal, did everything we needed to do. His number one issue is he can't come to work on time. Okay, can't come to work on time. So he tried to transfer to New York, Fifth Avenue store, which is one of the largest stores in the company. That store does about 800 million a year to my 50. 700 employees versus my 140. So they got high expectations. So the first thing I just told him, Daryl, he said, well, I said, Daryl, I said, look, I'm gonna endorse you for this role up there. I said, I guarantee you what's gonna hurt you is your attendance. So I had the human resource manager, we have in-house human resource, I had her set the file. First thing they said, well, this man can't come to work on time. And they interviewed him anyway, like, hey, what's going on? Well, you know, I had a transportation problem. You think they care about that?
No.
So what I told him was, I said, man, buses run every day. Uber, you know, you gotta get to work an hour beforehand and do what you gotta do. But he had an excuse for every reason why he couldn't. So guess what? He needed a job up there. So today, HR manager said, you know, he's continuing to be late. So I pulled him in the office. I said, Daryl, let me tell you something. I'll be very frank with you. I said, man, we're at the crossroads. I said, you got 1 foot on the banana peel, other than the grave. So either way, you're going down. I said, but you did this to yourself. And he looked at me, he said, man, you're right, I did. And I didn't fire him now, but I said, it's coming. So you got a choice, man. I just gave you the opportunity. You got to make a decision. But I called him, but it's not one of those things we just called him out on. We helped him along the way. But you got to be able to admit where you are and what you own. So even with people, like Bishop was saying, or the pastor was saying about this individual, she saw potential and she established a relationship. So just like this young man, he wants to go to New York, and I know that. That's his passion. I don't mind helping him get there. Performance-wise, that's not the issue, but he's got to own the attendance piece. But we brought to his attention. And I only do that through relationship. And the way I framed it up, I said, man, you know, regardless of where you go, you got to be on time. So if I fire him tomorrow, that next job, they'll fire you again if you're late. So you got to fix that part of it. But as leaders, we have to get that feedback, no matter how bad it is. But also, I found something positive when I was talking to her. I said, man, I just saw you work with this older lady that she's like 80 years old. I said, you made her feel like a queen. And she was just smiling. He said, man, thank you. So I was able to start at that route when I saw him do right. But if you want to continue to have and right experiences, you got to be here, brother. So I got to him. So like Bishop was, Pastor was saying, just observation, connection, and once you have that relationship, you can coach and get that feedback to help raise them up. So anybody else want to share an example of that when it comes to your volunteers, what you've done in your ministry to coach and develop a person? Let me rephrase the question. Anybody have people on your ministry you be coaching and developing? Okay, gotcha. So all the time. So let's think about this. Anybody ever seen this before? So this is a conversation between a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and a CEO. Question is, what happens if we invest in developing our people and they leave? A CEO says, what happens when we don't and they stay? Power. So if we don't invest in our people and they stay, they're killing us. Your ministry's not going to grow because you're not going to attract new people. Guess what? Because Brian's on there, he got attitude problem. But if we're training people and giving feedback in the moment and keep reiterating our vision, then we can also drive retention, but you got to invest in them. I mean, that is critical, investing in people. So I'll give you examples. I talked about the Apple Store. So when I start firing people, I'll say this, people, so this is just my opinion, is that the people fire themselves. I just do paperwork. Okay? Because I've told you what to do. You know, we coach you, you have to type correct, you gotta know. You just wrote your own note out of here. Okay? So when people start leaving, people were questioning me. I fired one guy that had been where he fired himself, but he was there for 19 years. A wealth of knowledge. Okay? And so they said, I can't believe you fired Chris. I said, well, Chris fired himself because his attitude, talking down on people, making them feel inferior. He had been warned on it, but sometimes you can be so smart for your own, too smart for your own good.
Yeah.
And that's what he was. Because you don't know how to lower or up the volume on your iPhone, you're an idiot. He was that type of person. So I let him go. And that was the best thing I've ever done. Because number one, when I sent him out of there, the rest of them got in line. If he's been 19 years and he got rid of him, what you think gonna happen to you? Yeah, nobody's indispensable. Including myself, we're all replaceable. You know, I tell people, I drop dead tomorrow, Albert's still gonna be over. They didn't close the store for my funeral. It's gonna be over. The party will go on without me. But you have to make sure that the people in that building and your organization, that you're getting a return on your investment. More importantly, you're showing them what you want to see. All right, two things here, and I'm going to pick up the pace here. So, two approaches to development. So, a lot of people believe only poor performers need development. Anybody ever heard that before? Or seen that? When you focus on, some people do that, which I disagree. So development is the responsibility of the human resource department. Not my job to develop. It's Bishop and Pastor's job. Pastor more development. I'm just here to maintain. Wrong answer. Okay. And here I'm talking about career development from a job perspective, but this is true too in the church. I wrote career development focused on moving capable employees up a predictable corporate ladder. So you said something earlier about Christian education, how you have to be part of it to move up the ladder of ministry and things of that nature. So do people see the ladder? So in your individual ministries, do people see that there's a possibility of upward mobility? Everybody wants to be in charge. And I give you an example. I have 9 managers that report to me, and 3 of them want to do what I do. I said, I'll help you do what I do, but it won't be in this building. You know, you're going to go to run another one, but I'm going to be here until I retire. But I will show you what it takes. So in your ministry, you know, are you showing other people that you see potential in, that there is a ladder, and that they can come behind you or get moved up in another area of the church? People like to be in position. Okay? People like to know that there's no ceiling, or there's something higher. So something to think about there. And development means training. So like right now, we're doing a training or a workshop. What does that look like outside of this room in your respective ministries? You gave an example of how she texts you. That's a form of communication. That's working. We have a text thread, which I'm sure we have text threads in our church too, as far as in ministries. But are your text threads, by show of hands, how many ministries have your own text thread that you communicate through? Okay, so half of the room. Do you communicate only when there's something happening at the church, or do you just send out one, maybe a Bible verse about having prayer, and I appreciate you in the ministry? How many of you guys sent a message like that? Okay, so I'll just kind of go around. So what was the response you got when you sent that?
They were surprised and they were very appreciative.
Okay.
You know, and it was just a positive, you know, I have some that's out sick, I have some that's going through stuff. And if they come across my mind, I just, you know, tell my friends one more. You know, we have one that's pregnant, so, you know, she's been having a difficult.
Okay.
And so we just let her know that we're thinking about her.
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget.
They look forward to the scriptures that's sent every week. They said it's level of different things, so I try to make sure I communicate at least sometimes, mostly twice a week, but.
Right, that's great. Somebody else have to leave over here at the end. Oh, she okay, I thought so. Okay, all right.
Well, I've kind of changed up my communication style because I work with young adults, so I'm a young adult director. So mass text and communication does not typically work for young adults. So I do more so personal messages. So I literally send individual messages name-based to everyone in my group. The responses are far better that way than sending mass communication text, because they don't respond to mass communication, or they'll just simply say stop. Awesome. So I mean, it is a very different dynamic because I work. I mean, I'm you know, overseeing millennials, so that communication piece is very different.
And it's very interesting what you said, because you saw it wasn't working and you came up with an alternative. You know, that's important. Okay, because if it's not working, then we just stop, or then we try to figure out ways to keep it, to make it work. So that's a great example. So I would say that too in your leadership, that your communication style, you know, if it's not working the way you want it to, is that try something different. Because when people, I'll say this, I'll tell anybody this, when people feel like you care, they'll run through this wall for you. We won't even ask you why they run through the wall. Because they're that passionate because you show that you care. That's important as a leader. And it doesn't take anything. You know, I'll tell you, you're not taking anything away from yourself by being nice to somebody.
No, not at all.
At all. You actually add, you know. So just really think about that. So from a new approach, everyone in an organization can be developed. I don't care how great a person is, you still gotta pay them attention. And I've learned it the hard way, because they were so good, oh, Carmen doesn't need me to coach her, she's got it. No, Carmen still needs that touch base. You know, so from the C players to the B to the A, touch all of them, okay? So when you look at your message, and of course this is written in a corporate form, but employee development is every manager's responsibility. So when you look at your team, it's every leader's responsibility. And you guys can rely on one another for feedback. You know, so if I'm struggling with my team and I'm having turnover, I'm gonna ask one of you guys. I noticed that the parking lot ministry, man, these people don't need you. What are you doing different? Well, just kind of walk me through what that feels like. Bouncing ideas. That's not showing you're weak. That's showing that you have concern and you want to get better with your team. All right. So development may include training, but it also means informal, on-the-job ways of learning, such as stretch assignments, job rotations, action learning, coaching and feedback and mentoring. So the point I want to focus on from a church perspective is action learning. Okay. So I'll give you an example. So Ms. Callie Kearney has been the chair of the usher ministry for probably 25 years. Okay. So the thing that's interesting about her is that one Sunday we were ushering. Now here, you guys, when you do prayer, you do this. I know it's different signs. Okay. Okay, so that's not what we do. So the prayer position. Who's the usher here?
They don't even look at the book.
Okay. So there's usher signs. And they're universal usher signs. So anyway, so you know this right here means come up like turn around. Okay, at our church, when the pastor is speaking or soloist, you wave your hand so the ushers in the aisle don't turn around. Their backs to the door so nobody can come in. Okay. So we messed up one Sunday so bad. Miss Callie called us and we came off the floor and Pastor God said, let me tell y'all. Let me tell you this. Said y'all were horrible. You are embarrassing. And this is unacceptable. And people look at her like, oh my God, you know, shaking. You know, so she said, we're having training next Saturday. And I want you in the aisles where you were, and we're gonna go through all the motions. And people were very upset about that. But when I thought about it, excellence is not a goal, it's an expectation. We knew what to do, we were lazy and not paying attention, and we lost control. And she called us on it. And a lot of those ushers right now, that's why she's been in that position 25 years, people respect her. And she's talked so bad to me before. But, I mean, a little boy coming up, I respect her because I know her passion. You know, so I'm not, saying we go out and be Joe Clark on people here. You know? But what I am saying, be stern in what you stand for and believe. And that's passion. Okay? So, the next thing here is that why some people, let's say managers, why do people neglect employee development? Because a lot of times you feel you don't have time. Somebody earlier talked about time management. Even in a volunteer role, you have to have time management. Make the time, iron it out, carve it out in your day. Then I'm gonna sit down and send Miss Mary a text message at 5 o'clock. Plan it out. Because like I said earlier, what gets rewarded gets repeated. Number two, they believe as long as their employees are meeting basic performance expectations, it's enough to address any performance issues during an annual or quarterly review. So let me explain that. I always tell people, if you walk into your appraisal and something is said that caught you off guard, that manager or leader didn't do their job. So you wait a whole year to tell me I'm not doing something, but I didn't know this last quarter because you weren't talking to me. And you suspected me to know. It's the same thing in our ministries. Are we having frequent touch bases and meetings? Now I know in the black church we have a meeting for a meeting. You know, so you've got to be strategic about people's time. But again, are you having those touch bases? What does that look like? You know, and are you using the right vehicle of communication? And so, a last point, that managers often avoid employee development discussions because the conversations are frequently for a variety of reasons. Let's keep it narrowed down to one focus while we're talking. Okay, so we're here for this vision, this is an opportunity, this is where we want to go. So be here, keep it alive. Did it move? All right, so this is the part I really want to hone in on as leaders. So think about this. So inspiration versus motivation. Okay. What are the distinctive differences? And this is the interactive part. Is that when you hear about inspiration and motivation, what are the differences between the two?
One's internal, one's external.
What do you mean by that?
Inspiration is external, like I can inspire you to some ideal, but I cannot motivate you. Motivation itself is internal.
Right. All right. That's a great answer. Thank you.
One is
Anybody?
short term, one is long term.
Say it again.
One is short term and one is more long term.
Okay. Which one is long term?
Inspiration.
Okay. So do we agree with that statement? No right or wrong answer, but I mean I agree with you. So short term versus long term. So I'll give you an example. So right now in this room, you're an audience. And I'm looking at everybody's eyes, you're paying attention, you're writing notes, you're engaged. But where the rubber's gonna meet the road is when you hit that door. So right now you're an audience, but tomorrow are you gonna be an army? Wow. So are you gonna execute the things we talked about in this room and with your teams? So when you think about that, right now, all of us are motivated. You know, you're hearing things you like, okay, I didn't think about it that way, but how do we take it to inspiration? Inspirational leadership makes all the difference in the world. When you inspire people, because motivation, to your point, has come from within, but are you an inspirational leader? The people look forward to hearing what you have to say. I know they do with you, because the lady said, I gotta hear from her. I hear what you're saying, but I gotta go to the source. Inspiration. They look forward to hearing and seeing you. So, you know, is one outweigh the other? Absolutely. When it comes to leading people, is one more relevant than the other? And I really believe, me personally, what has gotten me to the places we've been as a team and where we're going is the inspiration piece. I'll give you an example of that. So, you know, people always joke with me, and I learned from pastors I watch people. You probably remember this. Bishop preached a sermon. This was when you were at Riverside in our church. It was called Releasing People to Their Destiny.
Goodness.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been how many years?
I have no idea.
Okay. I remember that sermon. Let me tell you why. Because things he said were so true that, I mean, it was amazing. He was like, hey, that some people, you know, the party will continue without you. We were going through some turmoil in the church. And it was so many ways you could dissect what he said that some people you just have to release to their destiny. You know, I told one guy the other day, he told me, man, I'm ready to have your job. Okay, well, no, you're not ready. Because you're not even bringing it to basics. So if you feel you're that great, go out and do your life's best work somewhere else. You know? And so sometimes you gotta release people to their destiny. So I remember that. So when you think about inspiration, is that it's not always positive. We gotta give feedback that sometimes doesn't feel good, but it's necessary for growth. Because people can hinder what you're trying to do, either intentionally or unintentionally. But you've got to be in a position to notice, but also coach it and treat it. So any questions about that or thoughts around inspiration versus motivation? Okay. All right, so we pretty much already defined this and the differences between motivation and inspiration rather. But motivation, I'll read the second one. Motivation pushes from behind, and inspiration pulls and draws you toward the future you want. You know, so inspiring, we want to pull toward the future we want to see in people. All right, this is interesting. You probably wonder, okay, why does he have peanut butter and jelly up there? So remember earlier we talked about reaching people through food. and what that does from a conversation perspective. If I remember the movie Soul Food.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's our lives as African Americans. So we all have a soul food type story. What was interesting was one day, and I make it a point to sit in the break room when I eat lunch. Because I want to eat my lunch among people and hear the conversations. So I heard a young lady say, she wasn't talking to me, she was talking to somebody else at the table. She said, we get paid on Friday, and I only have $2 to Friday, and this was Monday. $2 to her name, okay? So her story was that, you know, she had a child, father wasn't doing what he's supposed to be doing, struggling mother. So I reached in my pocket, I said, here's $10, go to Wendy's and get you something to eat. That's all I said. So from there, I went back to the staff meeting. I said, we pay well. We pay at Apple coming in the door $16 an hour. And some people in there make $30 an hour, okay? Just depending on the 10-year experience, education, that type of thing. So anyway, but you never know what people go through. So if I had not been at that table listening and acted on it, I uncovered something big time. So what I did was I went to Kroger, bought peanut butter and jelly, and just put it back there. Didn't say what it was for, just sat on the table. You wouldn't believe the people that were eating. And I had somebody come in and go, man, you know, I didn't have any lunch, but I just go in my car and sit in the car and empty stuff. You never know what people are going through. But a small gesture, as simple as that, can be life-changing to somebody. And they remember that. But the other thing that I told the team too is that, and we still do this to this day, is we have what we call employee stock purchase. So every employee in Apple can buy Apple stock. Okay, I put 10% of my paycheck in there. So I was talking to some of the people at the break room tables. Hey guys, so we have employee enrollment coming up. You guys need to get in. Oh, we don't make your kind of money. There's always warning. We don't make your kind of money. I said, you don't have to make my kind of money. I said, let me tell you why. I said, every day I'll watch you go to Chick-fil-A. How much you spend at Chick-fil-A? $13, $14 a day. On lunch. You know, stuff I say it's good, but it's high. Okay? So do the math, times 5. Now you see me bring my lunch. I can afford to eat that every day, but I don't. I said, so the money you're burning on Chick-fil-A, you could be putting 1% or 2% in employee stock. I said, go to Kroger, buy your lunch for the week. So I'm teaching, this is a grown man. He's like, man, I'm gonna do that. To this day, he brings his lunch down.
Wow.
To this day. And he's in the employee stock purchase program. But if I would have just taken what he said, you know what, yeah, you don't make my kind of money. Oh, keep walking. Yeah. That's a discern. I'm not a good leader. I challenged what he said and gave him a solution. It was up to him to pick up and run with it. But I gave him the tools. So as leaders, you got to get the tools for people and show them that you care. All right, we're getting to the home stretch here. So fearless feedback. And I was sharing this with Pastor Moore earlier. One thing about Apple that's something we teach culturally is fearless feedback. And what that means is you give feedback at all levels. Okay, so last week I had my manager, and he's out of Nashville. And he kept talking about a certain metric. Okay? So didn't ask me how I was doing. Just came back on vacation. He wanted to talk about this metric. So I said, Steve, I said, let's stop a minute. I said, I'm not trying to throw up deflectors. You know, people can throw up deflectors, get you be going one way, they try to take you another way. I said, no, I know where you're going. I said, but ask me how I'm doing. How's my vacation? Oh, okay. And so he said, thank you for bringing me back in. Because when you start harboring down an avenue and you're not showing the people, a person you care about them first, you lost me. You know? And so that's important to check in with people and do that. So from a feedback perspective, feedback is a gift and it's valuable. But you have to create that culture where it's okay to give feedback. Now, with some people I deal with, it's Christmas every day because I'm giving them killer feedback. But it's okay, but we will create that culture. It's okay to talk. And so, and I'll give you an example. I did something that somebody didn't like, and they came and told me about it. And she said, I'm very nervous about telling you this because you're the big guy. But I feel you were wrong in what you said in your approach. And I thought about it. I said, Annette, number one, thank you for telling me that. And I went back and played my mind. I said, you're right. And she lit up. There's some people, when they come to you, I'm like, man, you don't get on my face, so what's that in my head, you know? Because I know they're not coming from a good place. But when people see you're receptive, you know what? I ain't looking at it that way. but I would take that into consideration for next time. Something as simple as that changed the whole thing. So the other part of it is that feedback helps keep the train on the track, on the right track, and helps avoid derailment. Constant communication, feedback on how we're doing as a team. And it's practiced at all levels, and encourage you to give it directly to that person. One thing I always say when people have an issue, I say, well, did you talk to Johnny? Or did you just come to me? Okay, well, I didn't want to talk to him, but he has an attitude. Okay, well, why does he have an attitude? Let's figure this thing out. You know, so we walk through the steps to build relationships. But just think about that from a perspective as a leader. How receptive are you to receiving feedback from your team? You're giving it, but can you take it? Just something to think about. All right, let's talk about ways to treat cancer. Okay, we all have cancers on our team. Anybody not have a cancer? It's okay, we can be transparent. Yeah. You guys?
On my core team, I don't have it.
Okay, on your core team, you don't.
Yeah,
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, we got some. I just have cancer up there at work. Right, it's in general. So I'm going to say this, and I want you guys to really think about this, is that, think about, anybody ever heard of the head, heart, and hands concept? Yeah. Okay? So the head is that, do they understand the vision of what's expected? The heart is, are they bought in? The hands, can they execute? 3 parts. So with that being said, when you think about it, people are cancerous. People will deliberately try to poke holes in whatever you're doing. It happens. But as leaders, we have to be in position to identify who those people are. But more importantly, how do we respond to it? You know, and I'll be honest, I told you earlier when I was going through this whole thing, transitioning the store, I had people calling employee relations on me all the time. But like I told them, I said, there's not a piece of, every piece of ground I walk, I cover. I said, so anything you gotta say to them, I can say to them. And I said, it got to a point, I said, hey, you wanna call employee relations on me, here's the number. I'm that confident that I did what I was supposed to do. Because when you know you're doing the right thing, and you've dotted every I and crossed every T, you can go to sleep at night. But you gotta address it. You know, and so the things I say there, as leaders, we need to make sure we're fair and consistent in our messaging and accountability to people. Because believe it or not, people talk. You know, so you may coach me on something, guess what, I'm on the phone, hey John, check this out. You know, this is what just so-and-so just said to me. You know, but are you fair and consistent in your messaging? And are you showing that you're coming from a place of love with them? Accountability is a great thing that can't be shortchanged. So accountability, people, when they hear that word, they automatically think negative. Okay, I did something wrong. Accountability can be a good thing. You gotta have it. So you have good accountability, you have bad accountability. But you gotta have balance, and people have to know where you stand. And the last thing I say here is that cancer can be treated, or it's gotta be cut out. You gotta have those conversations, because like I told you the example with the usher that was had an alcohol problem. We had to cut him out because he wasn't changing. But we can look ourselves in the face and say we gave him everything from a spiritual coaching perspective. We sat down with him, tried to walk with him, and he bucked the system, didn't want to do it, so we had to cut him loose. It happens. But don't be afraid to do that. Yes, ma'am.
So Brian, you know, the difficulty with the whole corporate structure versus church structure is not just that you have volunteers, but you also have the expectation that church is the place where I'm to be treated nice no matter what I am, what I do, how many times I do it. And so, you know, in the last couple of years, there's been this big church hurt movement.
Sure. Oh, yes.
And it always comes out of as who's been hurt by the church. Like you said at first, when you talked about people fire themselves, there's not a balanced perspective relative to, so the alcohol person. Believe it or not, we had one of those instances some years ago. But that person has carried the hurt all these years. Same scenario. And it's interesting because they knew they were alcoholics. Right. And you confessed it. But to everybody else, they the spin was, they moved me for another reason.
Right.
And so that's the challenge with the church, that's the tricky part.
Right.
Because people don't necessarily in the church think objectively, they just hear the victim cry. And so what they struggle with is, you hurt them.
Right.
So how do we, or do you have any thoughts about, how do we approach it, how do we handle it, or do you just keep it moving?
No, I think it has to be addressed, and I'll be transparent, that's the whole point tonight, is that, you know, our church, and I'm in a leadership position, we have opportunities like that, that's just one example I gave you. And we had another one with a choir member who was very disruptive and very disrespectful to other people in the choir. You know, just saying, hey, you can't sing, I don't know why you up there, this type of talk. You know, this is just really hurting people. So the approach we took, number one, that we got a pulse of what was happening. Okay, so it was a situation where one person was saying this, or how did everybody feel? And it wasn't a situation where they were just picking on this individual. There was a lot of validity to what they said. So we had to make a decision because you had people truly hurt by one person. All it takes is one bad apple, okay? So we had to make a decision to sit down with this individual and understand what was going on. And come to find out, the person was going through something else personally in their life and was taking it out on people there. It came out of that conversation. Now, all stories don't end this way, what I'm going to say, but we had to address it. And just kind of outline from a biblical perspective, this is what we expect, and tied into scripture. Even as a church, like you're saying, Pastor, that people feel because it's a church, I can just do anything and you got to love me. Yeah, I'm still going to love you, but I'm going to hold you accountable. But I would say from that perspective, everything is situational. And of course, you have to proceed with caution, but make sure everything's aligned and you can support it. And for those type of individuals, as long as you're consistent, because they're going to go out and tell a whole different story. Certainly. You know, and that happens all the time. But I don't get caught up in it, because I know the real story. And I know what you need. You know, but we want to move on from that. So, you know, mine, and hopefully I answer the question, is just like, don't sway away from it, but be very strategic and take a partner on how you walk with that person. And make the decision collectively. You guys remember, we were in a lawsuit years ago at Mississippi Boulevard with Frank Thomas. We voted those people out of the church. That was the hardest thing. I'll never forget. People I saw, you know, growing up as a little boy, older ladies, we had to vote to put them out. Because there was no merit to what they were saying, and the majority didn't feel that way. You got a problem with him, not the church. You know, but they kept causing so much disruption. Sure. We voted all 13 of them out. And what's interesting, I was telling somebody the other night, that each one of those members now either are dead or suffering some kind of ill. Every one of them. And it's only probably out of those 13, 5 of them still living. And that wasn't that long ago, is that? No. But we had to address it. And it's the same thing here. So don't be afraid to go into that, or go about it, take a part and do it right.
Yeah, that's the critical part, Ryan, of leadership. From a pastoral perspective, when you start talking about in the corporate world, how people fire themselves, and it is the same way in church. The difference being, as Pastor Linda said, people have this understanding of church that it's a perfect place and terminations don't happen and people don't get out of alignment. There's no reason to hold them to that kind of accountability. We had a situation earlier this year where we terminated an employee, and it became a church issue, and it shouldn't have. Right? It became a church issue because people's expectation, and I'll be very clear and very transparent, is that what happens on Sunday is enough to cover whatever else is wrong. And I said to some people who had the courage to say something to me, that what happens on Sunday is wonderful, but it's one side of the dime. There's still another side. And we have a leadership style and leadership expectations and all of the above. You can be real happy about what happens on Sunday, but if the rest of the performance that's expected is so troublesome that it affects the peace of the rest of the employees or church, then it's not effective. And the other part is, you can become so accepting of what's done in worship that you don't care what else takes place.
That's good.
And that's when you know it's dangerous.
That's
Right.
good.
And the other spiritual part of it, and I'm finished, is God being all-knowing and people in church watching. There is a level of, how are you gonna handle this? For God is, the courage to do this opens the door for greater opportunity, greater levels of growth and development. For people, it speaks to the reality that church is greater than what happens on Sunday.
Right.
That it has to be a ministry in motion. Because if what we do on Sunday is all that we're responsible for, then it's like being at the show.
Right.
And I don't go to the show every day.
That's right.
But when I go to the show, I have an expectation from popcorn to hot dog to you know, a presentation of movies that are coming out before the actual movie takes place. Church can't be like that. Church has to be ministry in motion.
Yes.
And that's the difficulty. I'm glad Pastor said, I was thinking about it as she said it, that there are always cancer situations, but the churches that thrive and become incredibly successful are the churches where leadership has the courage to confront that beyond the verbiage of people who don't understand. And people don't understand. That's right. As you were talking about your employee saying, how could you fire him? He's been here 19 years. It's the same song flipped.
Right.
How could you fire him because he's done so well here? That's one side of the dime.
That's right.
That's one side of the dime.
But if you think about, okay, we're closed now. Question and answer. Bishop, I mean, you nailed it. Because the thing is that as a leader, you have to can't be afraid to take a stand. And there will be unpopular decisions. And I read somewhere, there was an admiral, they said, well, how do you make decisions? He's an admiral in the Navy, real esteemed guy. And he said, when I go to make decisions, you know, I want them to wake up and read the paper. Just say, if a decision I made is published in the Washington Post, when my parents read it, will they be proud? So when you think about what's right, a lot of our parents did raise us correctly. And we want to live up to expectations. But we have to make a decision and take a stand. And that's what you did. And it was I'm sure it was the right decision. It's like the ones I've seen. But you're going to have people that don't understand, but you still got to move. You know, so that was a great example. Thanks for sharing there. All right, home stretch here. Behaviors and process equal results. You know, I personally believe nobody wants to wake up and be horrible. I really don't believe that. I think we're challenged, we're at different levels, but behaviors and processes equal results, the right ones. It goes back to leadership. Are you setting the tone of what behavior you want to see? Do they understand the process to get you the result you expect? Very simple formula, how that works. And for those that execute those two things, behaviors and processes, the results are going to be there. And from a church perspective, people see and they feel it when you're winning. They feel empowered. But again, they have to understand the why we're doing this and what the outcome of why we're doing it should be. Okay? This is very interesting. Anybody know who he is right here? The picture? No. Okay. This is the CEO of Methodist Hospital. Okay. You see, I used to have a hair. Apple just made it come on out there. Okay. This guy, Dr. Michael Uwike, okay, the former CEO was Gary Shore, okay, and this guy's another doctor, okay. What was interesting is that he came into the Apple store. Nobody knew who he was. Didn't know he was the next CEO of Atlanta Methodist Hospital. And he had phenomenal service. And the guy who waited on him just blew him away. He was dressed down, you know, just got his working out. Nobody knew. But he treated him with respect. So this CEO, he goes out and he calls me. He said, told me who he was. He said, Brian, I want to send some people into the store to see the culture there from Methodist Hospital. Like, absolutely. So they sent 2 executives in to kind of spend like an hour in the store shadowing what they saw. Okay? So Methodist, you know the one who I hate, the Methodist South, that was one of the worst performing hospitals. People say, you get sick, don't go there. Kind of like St. Francis. What you know, I wouldn't say Francis. I'm just saying what they say. I don't know. Okay. But he took an opportunity and turned that thing around. And what he was able to do, he went back to his leadership team and did a presentation. I saw it. And he asked permission to share that associate, which that guy there, that's who waited on him. Okay? He said that when I went into that store, I felt valued. It was probably 1,000 people in there, but I felt like I was the only one in the room. Because he focused on me, he was attentive, we connected. He said, so everybody that comes through Methodist doors, we need to have that kind of psyche and focus. Be attentive to the person in front of you. Show respect, be courteous. So at Methodist Whitehaven, they had a problem with the emergency room. The wait time was ridiculous. You'd be dead by the time they get to it. That's how bad it was. So what he did was, from an incentive perspective, he went in and told them, hey guys, the wait time for the emergency room here is 2.5 hours. We need to cut this down to 30 minutes. So I said, Dr. Wiegand, how did you do that? He said, I started an incentive program. Once we start making traction, I would give the employees gift cards. But also, if we did not meet the expectations of the customer, what they told them, we would see you within 30 minutes of you being here, they got a gift card. So from a team perspective, you're costing me money by having to give that customer a gift card. So we're gonna fix this. But I'm gonna give you incentives to make it work. So once he got it going, pull back. And now they're running like a well-oiled machine. So what he told me, he said, Brian, results do matter. And results matter at all times. But this is the healthcare industry. So when I went in his office, he has this electronic board, and they track metrics, greeting. The same thing we do, they do at that hospital. And it's amazing what you see. And so the team knows that results matter. We gotta have the right behaviors and processes to get those results. And so also, if you notice they're building a new hospital downtown, that Methodist down there, it's already up. University. A lot of people don't know that Steve Jobs had his surgery here in Memphis. At that hospital. And when he died, he left that hospital millions. So that money they got built, that's where it came from. Him. You know, money he gave them for that hospital. But results do matter. So as we close out here, think about your individual things that you're looking at in your ministries. Are we looking at, for example, I'll just use parking lot, because I can relate to that, because we have the same thing. What percentage of members are greeted on the parking lot? If it's raining, do you have umbrellas? Just simple things, okay? So what are you tracking? And there's no right or wrong answer. You don't answer. Just think about your ministry. Is there anything you can track from a performance perspective in your ministry that will help you improve on? So just something to think about is that as you continue to evolve there, and what is the 3 things we track at Apple: teamwork, innovation, and results. So how are we operating in teamwork? Are we being innovative, and what are our results? So those are 3 things we track. So there's something to think about in the ministry there. Last thing here, you have to water the flowers you want to grow. So like I said earlier, something you don't feed, something that's gonna die. So the flowers you want to grow, are you watering them? Think about that from a people perspective. Think about that from the vision of this church. Are we watering it? Or just assuming it's going to take care of itself? You got to take care of it, tend to it. And now we're at the point, reflections, questions. Yes, sir.
You basically shared your story about Mississippi Boulevard. So you've been in church, I take it, probably all your life.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So my question would be, have you ever considered leaving Boulevard?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, I'm all about transparency, being honest. So Dr. Thomas Murray is a good friend of mine to this day. Dr. Murray, when I was a little boy, he used to be the associate pastor at Mississippi Boulevard. Okay. So when Alvin Jackson left in 1998, we brought on Thomas Murray as the interim. Okay. And he was the interim for a year. Okay. So he applied for a senior pastor job. You don't want to know the reason why he didn't get the job? He didn't have a doctorate degree. Okay, so my argument to that was, Alvin Jackson always didn't have a doctorate degree, he wouldn't get it. So why can't we afford him the opportunity to go get it? So what did he do? He left. Now I was upset that he and I were like this. And if you look at him now, he got a church right corner, thriving and doing well, and he has his doctorate degree. So that was a bad decision leaders made, because you don't have to have, in my opinion, a doctorate degree to be a leader. You know, that's a requirement we have now. You gotta have it in Mississippi Boulevard. But that's the time I almost left, because I felt it was so wrong how they did him. When I look back at how he handled it, look where he is now. I mean, he's thriving and doing well, and he got him at his own pace. So that's the only time probably I want to leave. And also with Frank Thomas, we were good friends too, how he was treated. It was the whole lawsuit things, and how we'd be in church meetings and people just talk to him like he was a kid with no respect, and accuse him of things that we know weren't correct. Now, misappropriating funds, please, we'll show you the receipts. You know, so, but no, that was my only frustration points. But I stuck with it because for me with the church, you know, I grew up in Westwood. And we started when Mississippi Boulevard was on Mississippi Boulevard, and it moved to 250 East Raines. And so by me living in Westwood, that was even close to our house. So I'll never forget that at the point, my mother ended up being a high school principal. She's retired, but she was a teacher then. Teachers didn't make that much back then, okay? And my dad worked for Goldsmiths. And so there were a lot of little boys in the neighborhood in Westwood, South Memphis, Whitehaven. We were Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. And our parents could not afford they wouldn't send us to Washington, D.C. Well, that's when Harold Ford Sr. was in office. Mississippi Boulevard paid for all 55 boys to go to D.C. Didn't cost the parents a dime. And they wanted to show the sport. And I never forgot that. And so many people asked me, okay, when Stacey Spencer opened New Direction, why did you stay? Because I didn't forget what the church did for me. And you can always run. I want to give back. And that's the issue I have with a lot of people now who go out to these white churches like Life and Hope. I'm not knocking them, but I will never ban the black church. That's me. Because there's a difference, and I won't give what that church did for me. So that's what I said. All right. All right. What else? Anything else? Just reflection, yes, sir.
From decision-making process, and I think you said you were involved in the ministry of the church. So, how much difference, if there's any, between the way you make decisions in the corporate world and from the ministry?
That's a great question. So, I'm not too quick to pull the trigger, even at work. But I know at church, like Bishop and Pastor said, you gotta walk a kind of a fine line to a degree, because the emotional side with it. But the biggest thing, how we're able to make decisions, how I influence them, is that are they helping us get to where we are? Are they helping us execute this vision of leading, learning, and loving without limits? Or are they causing us problems? And are we bold enough as men and women, as leaders, to have that conversation? But even before that, do we have a relationship to have that conversation? And are you going to continue to allow that person to hurt what we know is possible? You know, so that's the approach we look at and evaluate. But also, from a church perspective, you got to be able to tie biblical points into it too, and show them. And we do a pretty good job at doing it. I will truly say, in walking with people and tying it to, hey guys, this is where we want to go. And from the Bible perspective, and this is where we're seeing you. I know you can do it, but is there a reason or something I'm doing what's causing you not to do it? You know, taking a part and showing ownership, and we've seen turnarounds. So, did I answer your question? Okay, thanks, sir.
Hard thing to do.
It is hard, but it's got to be done, because when other people see you not doing it, things start to fall apart. Yeah. Anybody else? Or any thoughts just on that you just reflect in your takeaways? Well, wasn't that good? No. But it's okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you, just being new, stepping into a new leadership role, balance creating because I'm trying to create a connection culture within my ministry. That's what I'm calling it, connection culture. Because I'm over our transitions ministry, which is basically helping new members to acclimate into the life of the church.
Okay.
So I wanted to create a connection culture, but balancing that with also coming in and making some changes to help streamline the effectiveness of the ministry.
Okay.
So because, it's typical that there may be at times some pushback for some changes.
Okay.
And so just kind of balancing the two. What is your best advice on that, being very new in?
Yeah, so when you say new, how new?
6 months,
Are you coming behind somebody else?
yes.
Okay. All right, so the first thing I would say there, and I've been in the same boat, and I'll even go to it from an Apple perspective and tie it to the church as well. So the person that was a store leader before me was a very passive guy and just believed all things would take care of themselves eventually. I disagree with that statement because you got to address things and have a plan, and he didn't do that. So he was only there 6 months and I was promoted to his role. The first thing that I did with that staff, all 140 of them, I had an index card. I'll never forget, I said, hey, I'm passing these blank cards out. I said, I want you to write down 3 things that you want to see done differently in this building and in our culture. And on the flip side of that card, I want you to write 3 things that you're going to hold me accountable to as a leader. What do you expect of me as a leader? And when I did that, I started looking at the comments. It was very interesting. And one of them was, from a cultural perspective, bring us back to what Apple stands for. I'm like, wow, bring us back to what Apple stands for, and it's people. So I give an example. So our mantra at Apple is enriching lives. That's what we do. Okay, but the first thing it says is that at Apple, it starts with our people. Our people are the most important resource. Our soul is our people. We didn't say the iPhone, but the product is people. Like you heard Pastor earlier, we're in the people business. Okay? So when you connect with people and show them, okay, I'm not just giving you direction, I want direction. Okay? And you're able to decipher, what's critical versus important. And that's 2 things I always tell people. Because everything is critical. It may be important, but how do you balance that? How do you prioritize, your big rocks? And I would say from there, from a balance perspective, once you strategically outline what your vision is, and it's aligned with what the church's vision is, and then you're able to present it, but if you think about what you did, you got their input too. You just come in and say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. I wanna hear from you on what we can do differently. And when you start implementing some of those things and having touch bases and they see it, I'm telling you, you have a powerhouse too. That's exactly what I did with Apple. That's the same thing I did with the men's ministry at the church, was that I came behind somebody who was just there. Some people want a dime position, and they're a little innovative. I'm like, man, we gotta change this, because people die out. We gotta attract new people, but we gotta get them, so that's what I did. I said, hey guys, what's working? What's not working? And then I wrote out a plan. They're like, okay, I see where this guy's going. I get behind him. So, you're welcome. All right. Bishop.
Come on, let's pass the Brian.
Thanks so much.
Phenomenal stuff. I know you've had a long day, but this was worth. Come on, let's do it, please. I'm gonna get us out of here, but I want to be honest about the fact that I have been in the Apple store several times, the old store, and it was not inviting. I want to be honest enough to say that when I'm in the Apple store, the engagement is incredible. And I spoke to that young man, Brian, long story short, because how he handled me when I first came in the door. And for me, that made all the difference in the world. Pastor, let me tell you, my biggest thing is customer service. I don't have a problem paying what I have to pay, but what turns me off completely is when there's a lack of customer service. And I mean that sincerely. I don't care if I'm buying a car, I don't care if I'm buying a shoe, I don't care if I'm buying a package of gum. Customer service makes the difference. To the extent that if you're not engaging, when I walk up to a cashier in a store, CVS, I want to see your face. I want to hear something from you. So Pastor Linda teases me about Kroger. I've seen Sherry in Kroger, I've seen Duke in Kroger, I've seen a lot of people in Kroger. And the thing that really captures me is in my Kroger, the employees know me by name. All right? They know me by name because there's a relationship. I get my chicken from Superloaf, but I get everything else from He mad. Superloaf got black frying chicken. They got black people frying chicken. So, you know, I go to Kroger because of how I'm treated. And I really want you to get that. People come to churches where they're treated well. And I think the natural assumption is that people are going to church. Sean and Quincy just had a phenomenal opportunity to go to a conference. And I want y'all to hear this, that people are doing more streaming, online, visitation, than walking in an actual site. So if that happens, if that becomes the mainstream, then customer service in that context is lost because you don't have the opportunity to be face to face with that person. All right. Heard a little kid say this on Facebook the other day. You passed other churches you could have stopped at. That's a very true statement. Because you know, there's more than CVS. There's Walgreens and Walmart sells pharmacy as well. And so the bottom line is how you serve people determines whether they continue to come and stay with you. And you don't need to be false and fake with it, but you got to acknowledge it.
Bishop, can I say something?
Yes.
I had an experience recently. I went to a floor and decor place on Summer because we're getting ready to renovate the restrooms right here in the lobby. And so I was been looking for tile. And the experience was this. I walked in the store and every person, from the person at the register to the security person, as I walked around the store, whatever they were doing, whether they were handling inventory, whatever, looked up and asked me, could they help me? Now, what's interesting about that is I remember when they used to do that at Home Depot. But Home Depot has gotten so familiar with us, making the money now, they don't do that. But I went to this place. Now, here's the other interesting thing about that. It was a store full of young African Americans. I was so impressed because I'm now seeing people who are in retail places. They got head scars on me. I'm like, what is happening to us? But anyway, I was so impressed that I asked to see a manager so that I could tell him, because I know those young people in there are making a difference in that store and they need to hear it. He asked me, I didn't tell you this, he asked me what I could speak over the loudspeaker to say to them. And at first I didn't want to do it because, you know, I was just saying, I just want to let you know how well your employees are doing. But then he was like, no, come on and do it. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Because also there were other customers in there. They put me on the loudspeaker and I told them who I was. I told them I was New Life and why I was there. I mean, it's in the middle of the day and it's just a regular day. And I said that, and it was so interesting because I know, you know, of my experience. I went home, and then they all started, because they had walkie-talkies or what have you, they all started responding back. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm saying that to say, I don't know how much those kids get paid per hour. But what I appreciated was, even though they were working for a floor and decor place, they're in uniforms, they're handling inventory, they understood that the customer made the difference. Because if you don't have customers, you don't have business. And so I did that because I also appreciate that when people do that for us. And y'all know we've experienced that. So people have written us letters or what have you. But that's what's important too, as you were talking about, you know, our ministry is from the street to the sea. So no matter what position you're in, you know, just speaking to people, just stop at what you're doing, whether you are writing something, whether you are transporting something, some type of something from one place to another. When you see somebody, just look up and speak to them. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, customer service is a critical issue for us as leaders. And I appreciate that, Pastor. And, you know, 11 years ago, it's interesting, he was talking about his leaders. 11 years ago, we were in a position of recruitment. When you talk about the lunch team that started this church, they were recruited. This wasn't a matter of, you know, somebody just coming along saying, I want to help y'all. No, we recruited them. when we began our movement as a church, there were people who joined. There were many instances where people were working and it was not necessarily something they had been doing. With Kelvin Security, when we started out Soto Civic Center, Monique was the first leader over security, and she had a ragtag bunch. I mean, it was ugly, but she got them to do what we needed to do. I mean, I'm very serious. It was, and Monique is a career police person, police woman, and she's very thorough in her understanding the knowledge of police procedure. The folks she had working with her, it was ugly. And she had to do a lot in terms of coaching and development. So it's part of the fabric of our church. You all were recruited. If you're in leadership right now, you were recruited. You didn't walk up to us and say, I want to do this. You were recruited. And so coaching and development, it has to be intentional. And I sat there listening to Brian talk, and I thought, this is an opportunity for you to be coached. And I know you've had long days and we're going, but this, you gotta see what's happening in front of you. And Brian Harris is here as an expert to coach us. And he said something about what's gonna happen when you leave this room. Because at that point he was talking about inspiration and motivation. And even though you're tired, because I get it and I hear it, see it, you have to internalize things, this kind of information, this kind of expertise, and you gotta use it somewhere. Because here's the difference. He goes back to Apple tomorrow. He goes back to Mississippi Boulevard Sunday. We stay here. And what becomes of this church is inextricably tied to how we take this information and put it into practice. It has to be a culture of excellence. All right? And the final piece of that is, it's ever changing. What happened in what worked for you in 18 may not work for you in 19. May not work for you in 20. And that's why as a leader, sometimes you have these great expectations of people and you're somewhat disappointed. Because you gotta understand what worked for you and why it worked for you in that time frame. And it may not work for you in 19. What worked for us, and I'm serious about it, what worked for us 10 years ago does not work for us right now. It just does not. It does not work. From anything in worship to whatever we're talking about in leadership structure, it does not work. And for many of you, you assumed ministries where you're having to work extremely hard, okay, in a ministry